we had had this business for 17 years. I wasn't letting it fold for anybody.
Mhm.
But because these builders hadn't run their books properly,
Mhm.
or taken on too much or not taken on enough, or essentially just how they managed their own business, it is now affecting my business, because not only have they not paid me, they've locked me out of the site and all of our equipment is there. So
Mhm.
my team no longer have a project to work on. I need to find new work for my team. I need to move people around. I need to make sure that my suppliers are being paid. That was a very, very scary moment. I think I got, I gave myself one day to cry, John, one day before, before I got up the next day. Because my husband said, he goes, I think we're cooked. We worked out with all of the debts that we owed, we basically had 5 days worth of capital in our bank for the running costs of the business, just taking into account everything that we had. You know,
Right.
if we went like this and walked away tomorrow, which I said to him,
Welcome to the Your Message Received podcast. And now, taking your message to the finish line, your host, John Duffin.
Hey folks, John Duffin here with Duffin Media. Welcome back to another episode of Your Message Received. Your Message Received is the home, the place, the platform to help you find your best, most true, authentic business voice. Get what you want, find what you need, improve your results, make billions of dollars, meet the person of your dreams. I can't promise those last two, but we're hoping today's guest helps us bring that home. And we're always thrilled that you keep coming back to the show, watching, listening, subscribing, and we keep driving authenticity through your front door. Today is a good one, folks. I got somebody here who, in essence, is not just a business fixer, not just somebody who cleans up your business, but has the credentials to do so. It's not just efficiency, it's creativity, it's the ability to make your business hum. Sonya Corkery is here joining us today. Sonya, welcome.
thank you so much, John, for that lovely introduction.
Thank you. Hey, folks, here's a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. So I completely butchered the first intro. Thank God Sonia's here because she cleaned up for us how this all went, including turning on recordings off and on. So that's just a little of the behind the scenes fun that we will say you got to miss out on. And I think you're in a good one. Folks, Sonya comes from a significantly successful business background, starting from a very young age, which we will touch on. Business operations, data management is part of Sonya's forte. Financing, gaining clarity, helping others unclutter the mess to move business forward. The reason I thought it would be a perfect time to bring our guest on today is if you're watching or listening to this episode in real time or close to the published date, we're toward the ends of the first quarter. If you're not watching it in late March, well, that's okay, because this works anytime. But I bring it up because there's a little more pressure sometimes in terms of the fact that people feel that as opposed to the new year, new you mantras that people are starting, and now you're deeper into the execution, that maybe you're not quite as far along as you'd like to be. Maybe things have not been humming quite as smoothly as they were. Not that I'd know that. But and maybe you need someone to come in and stabilize and set things apart. And I thought today would be a good opportunity to, in essence, tighten the ship, so to speak. Sonya, talk to me about in regards to your own business acumen, which is a great story, I think, in regards to how you got started to get to a point where you felt capable and confident in helping others.
Well, as you mentioned, John, my journey started from an extremely young age. I was pulled into a family business. My mother especially was extremely entrepreneurial. My dad helped where he could, but it was really more about her journey. And observing that from a young age in itself was such an amazing lesson, to observe and view her struggles, her successes. But I started from like 8 years old, working in our service station, checking tire pressure, filling the vehicles with, fuel, gas, checking oil, and selling drinks and taking the money. And that was how I largely learnt to give back change and what, and understand processes and why things had to happen sequentially. And I didn't realize at the time, but I was basically just cheap labor at that time because my parents and my mother had owned many businesses before, but in this instance, they bought two businesses side by side, and one was basically, the books were fictional when they were sold to my parents. And so one of those businesses basically was drowning the other in that instance. So I was there helping because they couldn't afford other people. And at 8 years old, I was a warm body with a heartbeat, but I was still able to execute those basic tasks. And so the lessons I look back now that I got to learn in that instance were absolutely amazing, life-changing. And I just thought...
like you're an 8-year-old kid. We were talking about this before the show. So I'm blown away by the fact that you had checking tire pressure, making change, giving change, serving drinks. So you're interfacing with people.
Yes.
And I'm guessing most of those people are a lot older than 8 years old. How were you able to navigate? Like, what were the lessons? Do you remember?
Yeah. So when people would say, look, it's okay. And I would say, we offer driveway service here. I'm more than happy to fill your vehicle and do the service. That's my job. And a lot of people felt almost uncomfortable letting an 8-year-old do these tasks because, what other 8-year-old is doing this? However, looking back now, they gave me the opportunity to learn by allowing me that space and time to complete those tasks. And so if they had have taken those tasks from me, I wouldn't have learnt those things that I needed to learn in that time. So it was an uncomfortable interaction in the beginning, but through learning how to converse with adults as an 8-year-old child in a setting where I was essentially doing an adult role, that gave me the confidence to be able to have, conversations with adults in the general public. And anybody who's ever worked with the general public knows that there's all different kinds of personalities and people. And sometimes you need to be able to observe social cues, and know when to speak, when not to speak, and how to speak to certain people. So they were valuable lessons that I got exposed to extremely early on.
I love that. You had said earlier, and I was curious, you said that one of the businesses was in essence swallowing the other. Did the business, like, how was it able to become stabilized? Like when you've got one business that's cannibalizing the other business, how was it able to get squared away, or did it get squared away?
So what actually happened in that instance, we had absolutely no money to even have a house to rent to live in. We couldn't afford to pay rent. My father packed up and he went back on the road. He was an interstate truck driver doing heavy haulage. And so that was a job he didn't want to go back to, but he did that because he knew that he could have consistent wages.
Right.
And so my mother in that position was left to run two businesses on her own. My older sister is severely intellectually disabled, so she lived with us as well. And my elderly grandmother at the time, who had sold her house to try to help prop up these, failing businesses, as it were. But what actually happened is we had to live in under our building that we were leasing in a mechanic workshop. We had just bare concrete, oil stained floor. We didn't have walls on most of the walls. It was we call it a shade cloth, I'm not sure, but it was just like a fabric that would enclose the walls.
Yeah.
And we had a shower and toilet outside of the building, and it was in a very in a high area, so it would get very cold in winter, and we would have frost and things like that. So living in that situation showed me resilience. But what actually happened from there was she managed to trade through to basically zero And
Okay.
she
Yeah.
basically brought that debt back to zero, to the
Mhm.
point where she sold just to basically release herself from that situation and went back into full-time work. But she went into a completely different field. She went into real estate from that period, which set her career from then on. And she became a very successful entrepreneur in the real estate game many years down the track. So it was a very pivotal point for my
Yeah.
mother. And very interesting to observe as an 8-year-old in that. Yeah.
What did that do for you? Watching, and I want to go even toward the part where you talk about, as you just said, a pivotal part of your mom's journey, who becomes a very successful realtor. What did that do for you?
It taught me resilience,
Mm,
but it also taught me that material things are just material things, and it's the weight of the importance that we place on the weight of that item is largely emotional. It's the emotional tie that we convince ourselves we have to this item. Excuse me. And so I would ask the question of myself every time I wanted to buy something, do I need this? Do I really want this? Or am I buying this because I think that somebody else might see me in a particular way? Or what will it give me from an emotional standpoint to buy this item? And so I would then talk myself out of purchasing things because I was like, I don't need that. And now I look at it, I go, I don't need that, but I could invest that money into bullion, shares, crypto, commercial property, more businesses. Where can I make more money off my money? And I don't live stringently by any means. And my children, it's interesting. I wish I could give them perspective because they're living a life that I could have only dreamed about at that age.
yeah.
But it's the importance that I was then on putting on things, and it really showed me that the basic things that you can appreciate in life, such as time with family or friends and outings and loved ones, that you can't get back because time is very finite for each of us, and we don't even know how long we have in that time.
I'm learning that personally as we speak. I really value when you say that. I also understand that you had a significant journey in the financial world too before establishing your own company and companies. Walk me through that.
So because I'd become an amazing connoisseur with, all of my experience as a young person, I fell
Right.
into sales. And then from sales, I was offered a position in one of our larger banks in Australia.
Hmm.
And I was offered that role because I was good at selling product. And basically, a bank is just that. They're there to sell products to their
Hmm.
client base. The beauty of that is that those client base are already there. You just continue to upsell products to the people you already have within your business. But because I started so young and progressed quite quickly, at 23 years of age, I found myself as a bank manager, and the ability to be taken seriously as a 23-year-old female in an industry that was largely with people that had been in that industry for 20 plus years. Most of them were gentlemen that had started their career from 17 years of age, straight out of school.
Hmm.
And I found myself feeling, for the first time in a long time, unsure of my ability because I started to question myself, feeling inadequate around these people that had so much more experience than I did. But I was obviously in there for a reason. So,
How did you navigate through?
um, every time someone could tell me I couldn't do something, I would double down and say, watch me. So it gave me the drive to say, not only am I going to execute this, I'm going to execute this better than anybody else has ever executed this. So, and I would fail. Things would not be perfect
Sure.
by any means,
Yeah.
but I would put in the hours, but the self-drive of not being able to do a terrible job was really, I was measuring myself of what I thought against these other people. And I was really in a competition with myself, if that makes sense. And so I had to ensure that I would be the standout. So not just meet the mark, but exceed it. And that gave me that skill set for the rest of my life to make sure that I was really competing with the last version of myself and trying to continue to be better as the future came.
Was that something that came to you organically? Did that come from your mom through the other businesses? Is it what you learned? How were you able to acquire that specific skill set?
I have a lot of admiration for my mother, and she came from a very, very challenging upbringing in the very remote parts of Australia. So her drive to want to be different, completely different from the rest of her family, be educated, have things, have a life, enjoy life. And she was like, if you want it, you've got to make it happen for yourself. Nobody's coming to save you. No one is coming. You need to get up and you need to move now. Every day that you wait is one you miss. Push and push hard. And there would be times I would be frustrated and I would cry and I would call her and I'd be like, I'm in the office in the branch, it's 9:00 at night, we've got this happening, and she's like, well, what do you need to do? She's like, you've got to, what you need to do. You need to just keep pushing. And it's interesting now, a lot of people they get to a point of burnout.
Sure.
Which, is something that has to be watched, obviously. But for me, I thrive on the pressure.
Hey, can you give an example of that you feel good about where you did in that experience in the banking world, where you were able to thrive under pressure and made something happen that you feel great about?
So when I was working in financial planning, so I'd progressed my way through, obviously, over the years into different skill sets and different roles.
Right.
I did commercial lending and then I went into financial planning. And financial planning, if you remember, I'd come in around the GFC, so probably not a great time to enter into that particular realm. But what it allowed me to observe is how much wrongdoing and corruption was in the finance industry at that time, and how people had largely, put their entire future in the hands of other people and not understood what they had entered into, and basically had been left destitute with nothing. And so one of the things that I was really concentrating on was being just doing things the right way and doing things with the intent of always doing what is right, what is good, what is true for those people that were my clients. And a lot of those people became, long-term friends. And so I would push against the grain often in respects to the products that we would have to, quote unquote, push.
Right. Push.
And I would say, no, the client doesn't understand this product. And in the event that they don't understand it, even if they say that they agree that it's the best thing for them, I'm not willing to put them in that position. So I won't push this product in this instance. And so I got a lot of flack for that, and a lot of negativity and pushback because I wouldn't push particular products. And it got to the point where, not that I would be a bit of a joke, but people didn't see me as not a senior, not a experienced person, because I wouldn't push things that, were coming in and they were like, they'd take us to lunches and they'd take us to all these amazing things to push a product. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. So the defining moment, I think, is when I had made my annual target within the first 3 months of the year. And I said to the bank, look, I'm actually going to apply to take a career break for 12 months. And they were like, that's fine. We're happy to give it to you because you've already met your annual quota within the first 3 months of the year. You have 12 months to decide if you want to hold this position. And my husband had asked me to come into the business full time.
Right.
At that stage, we had 2 children, I believe. And I never went back.
And that's the construction business that.
Yeah, it was an electrical contracting business that started with my husband just on his own. That's an interesting story. He came home one day when I had a 2-week-old and just told me, I quit my job today. I'm going to be self-employed. So no conversation ahead of time.
Fun.
I know. I was always the fixer. He's like, you'll work it out. It'll be fine. No problems at all. But we always had fallbacks for fallbacks. And what I learned from my situation observing my parents was you need to have fallbacks in place so that if things don't work out, you have other options, right? And so I took that all through my financial life. I took that all through our business journey of ownership. And here we are today. I think we have 4 trading entities. I think we have about 9 entities all up now. And we have a portfolio, we have team, we work in multiple locations, and we're basically coming full circle. Like, we're coming 180, where we'll get to the point where we will eventually sell, those entities and just live life as a quote unquote, semi-retired couple. Like, I'm 42 years old.
That's one of the nice things about starting at age 8, is that you get to have these kinds of chops and this kind of experience. But before all that, before you're semi-retired and all that sort of thing, I'm very curious. You said something before, and by the way, I like I've heard you say before in other interviews, backup plan after backup plan after backup plan, and you talk about it's all about mitigating risk. So I remember, like, you talked about in terms of your own story, that it wasn't as if the business took a straight up before there's all of these different entities, that you talked about the fear of almost having to close the doors 3 different times because of the failure of other businesses.
Yeah.
What's that like? I mean, because rather than we didn't sell enough or we didn't think enough or blah, 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 when did you realize that it's not always your own actions that cause businesses to succeed or fail?
So a few years ago, when this happened, it happened in very quick succession. So 3 of the builders that we were working with in our electrical business essentially liquidated overnight, and we were left in the hole nearly $1 million. Now, when I say that, I didn't owe any money to the tax agency.
Okay, good.
And I didn't, and I, all my liabilities for my team were paid up to date, but who I owed money to were my suppliers. And if you have a business that works in the construction space, you'll know that the suppliers are your lifeline.
Okay.
And so I all of my assets outside were protected. It didn't really affect that, which was great. But we had this business for 17 years. I wasn't letting it fold for anybody. But because these builders hadn't run their books properly, or taken on too much or not taken on enough, or essentially just how they managed their own business, it is now affecting my business, because not only have they not paid me, they've locked me out of the site and all of our equipment is there. So my team no longer have a project to work on. I need to find new work for my team. I need to move people around. I need to make sure that my suppliers are being paid. That was a very, very scary moment. I think I got, I gave myself 1 day to cry, John, 1 day before I got up the next day. Because my husband said, he goes, I think we're cooked. We worked out with all of the debts that we owed, we basically had 5 days worth of capital in our bank for the running costs of the business, just taking into account everything that we had. If we went like this and walked away tomorrow, which I said to him, we're not doing that. There's no way that I'm doing that. We have team, we have built this for 17 years because of somebody else. I'm not walking away. And so I had to strategize more than I'd ever done before. But within 12 months, we had made it back to black. We had turned, at the end of the financial year, we had netted 54,000, after we were in the hole nearly $1 million.
Right.
And so I had to do some pretty strategic things. However, without the help of our suppliers and, our financial team and basically our board, our accountant, brokers, everybody, it would have been very challenging, to be able to execute that. So I give massive kudos to our team and our board, essentially, to be able to help me get that through at that time.
There's a toughness to the way that you describe that. By the way, I was thinking your mom when you're so when you're on the phone calling her years ago, and she's like, "Well, you know what to do." That there's an inherent toughness there that was nice, and then you say, "Hey, I only took 1 day to cry. I've cried for longer than one day over a lot less than that. So it's really impressive. But what's more impressive to me is you're saying certain things that are resonating in regards to your current business model. Like you alluded to your board, where you talked about your accountants, your CVAs, and all that sort of thing. So, what gave you, it's not the courage because you're a very strong-minded person, but what gave you the readiness, so to speak, to be like, you know what, I want to transfer these success stories, this resilience to other businesses, to other people's businesses? How did that go?
So I always say that I'm selfish, John, because I get great joy helping fill my cup with the success of other people.
Okay.
So I won't say it's a selfless act. I just genuinely love helping people. And how it actually eventuated was we were in many business groups and people would say, how are you doing this? I need help. What would you suggest here? And I would be giving advice and saying, well, in this instance, this is how you may want to set it up. Check with the accountant, obviously, not knowing your full side file, not knowing your full situation.
Mhm.
But it was constant. And my husband's like, this is a business. You need to be charging for this. And I was like, oh, don't worry about it. I love helping people.
Yeah.
And it just became so much so that it literally took on a form of its own. And then I ended up consulting for people, and some people it would be only when they needed help. Some would be, I need to meet every month, or I need a full plan done so that I know exactly what the whole thing looks like. And so I took all of those combined skill sets over the many years that I had either been employed or in business, and I melded them into one model for the consulting to basically say to people, give yourself other backups. Let's create wealth outside your business, using your business as the vehicle to get you there. Let's make sure the business is running efficiently. Let's make sure that you have layers of protection. Let's make sure that you are constantly growing the bottom line and cutting back the expenditure and overheads you don't need. Let's look at your team. Are you giving them the time and space to train and execute where they need to, and stop being the bottleneck in your business? And it just evolved to this amazing thing where I get to help people every day.
Clear plan, as we were, right? I mean, so you've got, as looking through, I saw a LinkedIn post where you talk about the 5 ways that you're able to, I mean, it's obviously more than 5 ways, but you broke it into 5 different modules, so to speak: business health audits, monthly business advisories, business and financial mentoring, an implementation support system, and speaking and workshops. So, a couple questions, not just in, I don't mean simply what do you mean, but I mean more in regards to the sense that when businesses need those services, and I'm not speaking for all businesses, and I'm certainly no expert in that specific regard, but what I would say is sometimes you're so overwhelmed with clutter and stuff that you can't get out of your own way.
Yep.
When do you often think it's the right time to at least begin that process? Because I would imagine a lot of businesses wait way too long, to the point where they can't feel like they can't come out of it, and they don't. So what would be some of the inherent steps that you would suggest that people first off did on their own, just to wake themselves up before the whole year gets away from them?
So we always need to look at our expenditure as a whole in a business, because when things are coming in, we might get a little bit lavish with the spending, and we can buy things that we don't actually necessarily need. And we might not be forecasting our cash flow, which is really important. People just look at their historical data and they go, oh, I've made money, or I haven't made money. Oh, my bank account doesn't really reflect what it says on my reporting, but it's okay. And so we get this really vague, nonchalant, just kind of cruisy attitude. It's fine. Business is fine. Business is fine until it's not fine.
Mhm.
Are you forecasting? Tell me about your pipeline. Where are your peak times throughout the year? What are the down times? What are we doing to get the most out of those down times? How can we better market? Is there another way we can bring other income streams into this business model? There's all of these things. And so if people are happy operating in their business and they're just doing day to day, that's fine if they're fine with that. But if they want more, if they want to know that there's something at the end of the line other than just the sale of the business, if they would like to be able to have holidays and enjoy life and, make sure there's provisions for that, they need to look at that business as a vehicle, and they need to be separated, as not absorb themselves in that, so that they don't have time for themselves, their family, or to achieve the other things they want in life, because they're a person first and foremost. Now, whether you're a starting entrepreneur as a solo person,
Right.
whether you're a small to medium enterprise turning over $3 to $5 million, the fundamentals are the same. It makes no difference, but it makes a difference if you have the systems in place to make sure that liabilities are always provisioned for, and you always have set profit markers so that you will consistently be putting that to the side, and that you can afford to have time off and do the things that you want to do. So
Stay there for 1 second. This to me is really important in regards to these markers. And one of the things I just would, and I love the one you just said, that whether you're a solopreneur or a small to medium 3 to 5 mil, though those benchmarks, that's not the word you said, I'm sorry, but are the same. What are they?
So foundationally, you need to have the correct entity set up to ensure that you're giving yourself asset protection. So in Australia, we have, when someone is a solopreneur, they can be looked at as an individual, and their tax is calculated the same way that an individual person with a job. Now, you could expense out everything the same as a company. However, the layer of protection isn't there, because you're fully responsible for everything that happens. And so people don't even understand that. So they need to know, if you are having assets within this entity, they're very at risk. So not only do you want to take the risk away from yourself as an individual, but also for any assets that you bring in, they should be separated from the trading entity, and they can be leased back to the trading entity, be it IP, be it physical assets, vehicles, computers, whatever it is, but have them separate from the trade. So we start foundationally from the setups. We start on the systems and procedures. So how do we streamline? We don't want to be wasting money going out the door. And we need to know and understand our financials and cash flow. Like these are just, basic foundational, but nobody's really teaching that. Even business coaches are teaching the psychological aspects of business, but who's doing the money? What's happening with the foundations? People, it's important.
Sonya, I was in business, had an LLC, have an LLC, but formulated the LLC immediately in the States and blah, blah, blah. Came from a business background, but if somebody said, John, how is your cash flow? This is in the first, not year, 2 years. I'm embarrassed to say, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. I would have given you the standard dumb, I'll have to get back to you. And then I have to go ask somebody. And it's like awful. Like you said, nobody really teaches that, but it's the only thing that's going to keep people in business. You use an expression often on your post that I've seen in other places, but I love it just because of what you do. You shouldn't always be working within your business, be working on your business. And it's like, these are the sorts of things that become so important. Tough lessons that I learned the first couple of years that I've gotten better at. And to me, you're right. Mindset is great, but cash flow is really, really great. Uh,
You can be in a very zen place and be broke. So we want you to be in a zen place with money. And so an instance of that, I would come into a business,
right.
I would show them how to do the cash flow reporting, and I would do it for them initially. And then I would either train a member of their team or themselves, or both, ideally, to be able to do that, so that I can then move on to another part of the business foundations once we have that in place. Because I need them to understand it. I need them to, if somebody passed away or wasn't there to do the job or was on leave, I need them to know how to pick this up, run a basic spreadsheet on forecasting for the next 3 to 6 months, and know that their profit and loss and balance sheet is historical data. Whilst it's important, they need those 3 things to work together. And we need to be forecasting for the business to keep it alive. And we need to make sure that everyone who is a key person in that business is alleviated of risk, insured, all of the things that we can do to make sure that we put those in place. Because the mental load that it takes off you, knowing that you have that foundation in place, makes you just lighter, being able to make decisions, being able to have confidence in the decisions you're making moving forward in the business. And that, whether you're in America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, it doesn't matter. They're the same. So I could come into America and I could sit down with somebody as well and do the exact same thing that I'm doing here, and we would make a plan.
I love the fact you just answered the question, but I just am repeating the one that when you talk about your implementation support, where you don't just create, you help execute it. You just stated a moment ago, and I didn't want to just let that pass without acknowledging the sense that, while almost like spinning plates, that you stay with somebody so that they could spin the forecasting plate, and then you're good with it, they're good with it, and then you can move to another cog in the business.
Yes.
I'll ask you, for businesses, trends that you're seeing right now, what would you think? Maybe that was the answer. That is the most important thing for people to be aware of right now if they are looking to grow their business.
If you're looking to grow your business, before you take on any further liabilities, or let's just lock in the cost to open the doors and know what our break even is. Like, we know what the break even is. We break that down to a daily or weekly, what we need to bring into the business to make sure that before we even turn a dollar, we know what we need.
Right.
And forecasting, with the amount of technology that is available now, the great thing about AI is the streamlining of our business, standard operating procedures that we can do. We can do a video like this where it can be recorded. We can do the task. We can have it recorded. We can have a step-by-step video. We can have everything there. We are developing our own IP quicker than you could have ever done it before, for a much more cost-effective price. Build your business as if you were going to sell it tomorrow. Doesn't mean you have to. And make sure that you're ahead of the game in the industries and taking on any niche markets that need be. But know what your best sellers are, what keeps the doors open, and look at where the profit margins are in the niche markets, and move accordingly, and plan accordingly with those things. So, for example, electrical construction, or construction in Australia, is massive at the moment. We cannot get trades because there's a skill set shortage, but there's a lot of construction required. Anybody who's anybody is already trying to take on apprentices or upskill through the ranks from the bottom now, because you will not be able to afford to go out and pay $250,000 for an electrician, for example. You need to train within the ranks. You need to look at the longevity, and as if you were going to be in this business for another 20 years. Whether you are or you are not, somebody will come behind you and they will want, a business that's thriving. So we need it to be the best version of itself. And so utilizing technology and AI where possible, looking at advancements and growth for your industry, and being ahead of the game. So keeping your finger on the pulse in respects to the changes or impacts that might upcome, and how you can even branch out to other regions or countries.
what other industries, you brought up electrical in regards to just this insane amount of demand. What other industries are you forecasting, predicting will be huge growth opportunities if done the right way?
So obviously anything construction related, we're having that here. We can see that across multiple countries, there's
Right.
definitely a skill set lacking in respects to that.
Mhm.
So if you were looking to purchase other businesses and you were in electrical, for example, you might also purchase a plumbing business and align yourself to go into bigger, larger contracts, for example, but be able to take two pieces of the pie across the trades that would be able to execute on that contract.
Mm.
And so you kind of going across ways of your skill set. And so you're growing more than one entity at the same time in two different fields that are related. And I would say, obviously, we can see huge advancements in the tech space with what's happening with AI at the moment.
Right.
And so if you are working in that space, how can you plug and play into other industries utilizing that product or service so that you're not wholly reliant on just one industry? It's more diversification. We talk about that with investments, but let's talk about it in business. How do you diversify? You wouldn't have just one client. You need to make sure you have diversification. So you need to offer products and services that are diversified as well, but knowing what your money makers are, looking at your margins and profits and picking those accordingly. And so there's a lot of research involved across those, but you can test the waters and see what works before committing wholly to a whole new industry or a whole new product.
I love every bit of this. I want to just one more question before we break for this first time, which is the following, which is you also are an avid speaker. You speak in what are the things that ignite you, so to speak, when you're speaking? What draws in terms of your own ability to craft a story? What are the things that fascinate you, that get you emotionally charged up so that you're able to bring it back to the business?
So I have a lot of lived experience, and it's intergenerational, it seems. And so I can pull from stories from, grandparents, parents, myself.
Mhm.
And so through those lived experiences, it's cyclical. It's interesting to look back and observe that this has continued to happen throughout generations in whatever form, but the lessons are the same.
Mm.
So the universe will keep giving you lessons until you learn them. And so I get to speak from that lived experience. I get to speak from the experience of my clients. I get to talk about, working through the GFC and working through other challenging times in either finance or within the business, and really being able to put that into a passionate plea to people to say, please, if you walk away with nothing else, just have the curiosity at least to ask yourself, are we okay? Where are we at? And be objective and say, no, we need work, or we're okay, or these areas need improvement. And I just am pleading for them to say, if you need help, don't wait. Get on it now. Like, let's move, because every day is one less that you have. If you want to increase your chances of success or the success that you're having, get help. We can do this quicker with a team as opposed to trying to struggle on our own. So I really try to embody that passion when I'm speaking and just say, even if it's not me, just someone, please reach out for help. So when I was training with my speaking trainer, she's like, what do you want to achieve? I said, shock and awe. This is what I want from people, right? I want people to understand what can go bad, how bad it can be, but what you can have in place to mitigate that so that they will move on doing something.
So that they will move on doing something. And you bring in your lived in experiences. I lied. I had one more question. I just forgot it. But here's what it was. Because shock and awe and scaring people, I know that's not what you meant, but what I mean is sometimes people can be intimidated or give up. You had brought up earlier, and I remember liking this part when you were talking about creating teams from whether it's your assets or your business models, that you don't need to necessarily build an organization to have a solid team. What did you mean by that?
So we're in this amazing time where we can have fractional roles,
Right.
and they can be subcontracted, they can be full-time.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk about my board, obviously they're not employed within my business.
Mm-hmm.
They are skills that I need that are on the board as decision makers to help me mold where I want to go. And so when I'm building teams, I'm talking about not just teams within the organization and my guys on the ground who are executing for me. It's my finance team, my broker team, everyone that's involved in the success of this business that's not necessarily directly employed. And I love that I could have a fractional CFO if I want to. I can have a fractional virtual assistant or administration person. So I don't need to drown the business in the early stages, but I can still get the help where I need it on a fractional basis until I can grow and sustain a full-time role in that business. And it's about understanding and planning accordingly so that you have the team that you need to get you there.
I love that fact, and there's an expression in another group, in another context, that I've heard that always makes me happy, which is you just don't have to go it alone. And I think one of the nicest parts of this day and age, whether it's the information available and the procedures and policies via AI or the fractional roles, is it's not nearly as difficult to come out of a tough situation because you don't have to do all the building all by yourself. And I love the fact that team is such an important part of what you do. Sonya, I acknowledge you. I think this has been a really, really helpful and illuminating conversation. And folks, Sonya's company, the consulting company, Clear Plan Consulting, I will have the website up in the bio, so you don't have to go with the www. It's there. Just click it. Sonya, is that the best place to get to you? I know some of your social media profiles, Facebook, I see, in YouTube and Instagram. I have already connected with you or just explored connecting with you on LinkedIn. Are those the best places to get you?
Absolutely, yes. And if somebody is listening and they want to reach out to me, I'm more than happy to have a conversation, complimentary, just to kind of be your ear, be the person that's there to listen and maybe give you some starting points where you can get started. So you can book appointments through the website and you can have a 20-minute conversation or Zoom. Nice. If that's, if you're on the other side of the world, more than happy to chat and let's just see where we can help you.
Help sounds like it's definitely on the way. Sonya Corkery, thank you so much for showing up for me and showing up for us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, John, and big love to you all, and wish you all the very best and all successes in your life and journey.
You're a rock star. Folks, you've just heard another episode of Your Message Received. Keep liking, watching, listening, sharing, telling your friends, and we'll keep coming back with more. John Duffin here, Duffin Media. Keep coming back. We'll talk soon. Bye.
And now, making its way across the finish line, Your Message Received has been a production of Duffin Media.